Hey everybody, I'm Joe DeGanzik, and this is Smarter Home Life. It's the Smart Home Q&A for February, or is it February? Never know quite how to pronounce that. It's the second month of 2019. This is the video series where every month I take your questions that you have submitted a multitude of different ways and answer them on the show. The most interesting ones to a larger audience wind up on the show. You can submit them as comments. I don't always get to them. I don't always get through all the comments on the videos. So the best place to submit them is through smarterhomehelp.com, which is just a pointer to the form on the Smarter Home Life website. Go to the form, fill it out. Pretty simple question on the IoT or the smart home. Send it in, and I will usually get back to you in a couple days. I know it's been longer times this particular, the past month or so. It's been a little bit of an up and down year for me, so it's been just tough to get these answers back immediately. But now it's back to just every few days, or within a few days, I will get back to you. If you have something that's more than just a simple question, something that's going to take a few emails to solve, or complex questions, an upcoming home remodeling project, a smart home project, that could be ongoing and you've got questions, or a whole new build. I work with people literally all around the world. Check the box for a smart home consultation session or a consulting session, and I can talk to you in real time. They're really, really great. I get to know your project, get to know you a little bit more, the same for me, and it's pretty great. One person I was just doing a consultation with the other day said that he was going to have trouble watching my videos from here on out, or from then on out, because he couldn't interact with me or talk back to me, and I wouldn't be able to answer him. So anyways, hey Matt, how's it going? Let's see, February. I'm going to kind of just go through a couple of quick things and then dispense with my other usual updates, because this video is going to be split into two. I've got two great topics for this: security and smart home hubs, and they were submitted through a comment and then also through a question. So I'm going to just a couple quick things, and I'm going to dispense with all the other updates and things that I usually talk about. We'll get right to the questions. February of 2014, 5 years ago, is when the channel was created. Obviously, I was planning it weeks and months beforehand. So we're now in the 5th anniversary of the channel, which used to be called Lighting Answers back in the day. And I'm going to do a larger retrospective as we get through, the next couple of videos, which are going to be all about this place. Just some really, really great stuff leading up to April, which is the actual 5th anniversary of the show, if I can actually say this right. 5 years ago, think back, you could not buy a Wink hub. No one outside of Apple, or maybe, privileged journalists, had heard of HomeKit. There was no such thing as the Google Assistant. And it was safe to say the name Alexa without whispering it in conversation, on podcasts, on TV and radio. Thanks a lot, Amazon. And of course, the concept of a smart speaker was not even in our vocabulary. Only 5 years ago. How times have changed, right? Question number 1 comes in from James, and it was a comment on the Wyze Cam Pan video, the little eyeball that looks at you and it's a little bit creepy. No, I guess not really. Anyways, Wyze Cam Pan, the very inexpensive camera that moves around and does all kinds of interesting things. You can watch the video. Anyways, James wrote a comment, and I thought this would be really, really great. But again, this is going to be a longer response. So he basically said, something I would have liked to see you touch on is the overall security of the recorded images and videos, obviously. Let's see, HomeKit compatibility could be coming up, but Wyze has acknowledged they're working on it, but it's a pain in the ass because Apple. Let's see, the various smart home devices that he is beginning to look at, he's concerned somewhat about their privacy. And the truth is, privacy and security. The truth is, many of these devices, like the Wyze Cam and LifeX light bulbs, some smart locks, Nest thermostats, and so forth, all connect to the cloud, right? And it used to be back in the day, you could buy smart home devices. They didn't have to connect to the cloud. Now they kind of want to, or they have to. So the real question comes in that maybe on everyone's mind is, well, how safe is all of this stuff? So I actually, one of the other things I do for a living is I write e-learning, we'll just call it digital lifestyle courses for the Kim Commando Network. It's a new initiative for all of their subscribers. One of the classes I was recently writing was on security online on your devices. So I thought, I had to do a lot of research for that to make sure that even though my own general IT knowledge from being in the IT industry for a long time, just got to bring that up to spec. And then I thought, as I'm doing this course, I'm like, all right, I can kind of reuse some of that information to talk to you specifically about cloud security and all these devices. So when you think about security, number one, yes, use good security practices, good long passwords. If it's something like a security camera, if you're not already using a password manager, LastPass, 1Password, Dashlane, whatever, whichever one that you would like, LastPass, the basic service is free to use. It's very well vetted. I use it, have been for over 5 years now, and it's fantastic. Anyways, use long and strong passwords. I would recommend for security cameras, anything that's going to be taking imagery of your home, specifically, make them 16 characters or longer. And if you, depending on the camera or the device that you may have, if you can turn on two-factor authentication, which is, that code that you either look up through another app or it's sent to your phone with a text message, turn that on. It makes it just that more difficult for anyone to get into your account. So that's the number one thing. The number one part of this is protecting your own, cover your own bases first. Good security practices. That's number one. Also, number kind of tied in with that, Wi-Fi. Make sure that you've got a really strong Wi-Fi password as well. It's unlikely that someone is just roaming around your neighborhood trying to hack into your Wi-Fi, but things happen. People do this stuff. The other thing that you can do to protect your Wi-Fi network as well from people trying to scan it and find vulnerabilities, some guy just walking down the street or something like that, or your neighbors, is once you have all of your devices set up, and again, use a strong password, 12, 16 characters or longer for your Wi-Fi password. Turn off the broadcast, if you can, of the network name. Once your devices know what to connect to, they don't need to see that list. They don't. The constant broadcast of that network name doesn't need to be happening. They can connect back because they know where to connect to. So anyways, again, good security practices, that's your first base. The second part of this is your own risk factor. Are you a celebrity? Are you a politician? Are you a journalist? Are you someone that are you more likely to be some kind of a target for people saying, okay, I really want to get access to their stuff because if I can expose them and make a mess of their online life, then I win, right? If you're just an average person, you go to work every day, you come home, you have a family, you're probably not a likely target. It doesn't mean that you won't get hacked, but it probably means that they weren't personally targeting you. And something to where your data might be lost or your account might be compromised is because it was part of a larger operation by some botnet or something that swept up a huge amount of credentials or passwords or credit card numbers. That we hear about that all the time through credit, the big credit bureau hack. I think that was TransUnion a couple of years ago. You had Home Depot and Target. You hear about these all the time. We don't tend to actually hear about this through the IoT and the smart home names, right? We haven't heard about Wyze. I mean, they'll become a larger target, obviously, as they gain more notoriety and more press. But we haven't heard about a lot of, IoT companies actually getting hacked and having all of their accounts be compromised. You tend to hear about it sometimes probably because people didn't take good security. They didn't take their own personal security measures. So if you get hacked, it's probably because some big thing happened. The company was compromised. In that case, if you hear about that, immediately change your password. So if someone has sold all that information on the dark web, so to speak, that they can't get into your account. The other thing, of course, don't open phishing emails and don't allow someone to get onto your computer or onto your network, because once they're on your network, they can do all kinds of things. The main thing is keeping the bad guys, keeping the hackers and so forth out of your network, out of your devices, out of your computers. That's all of that is kind of job number one and step number one with regard to security. So now let me talk about security of these devices and of the cloud, right? So there's a couple components to this. These devices, and I'm specifically just I'm going to continue referring to the Wyze Cam. This guy has storage. So certain cameras only record to the cloud. Some of them let you also record to the device and to the cloud. Sometimes they let you record to the device only. That's the case of the first HomeKit camera, only recorded to the device. From what I recall, that was the D-Link, I believe. I don't remember there have been several new ones, of course, like the Logitech camera. Apple's got the security model right, in terms of all the devices communicate locally to either a HomePod or the Apple TV or to your iPhone. And then for remote access, then you connect through Apple's services that are secure. But again, these guys are all connecting individually out to the cloud. So this guy talking about security of this device and then of the cloud, there is a micro SD card slot on the bottom of this and also on the regular stationary Wyze Cam that let you record clips to the device. Now, those clips and the micro SD card are not encrypted. They didn't choose to add that because it would add another layer of complexity. If you pull the micro SD card off, put it in your computer, then you've got additional steps to access that footage. So if someone breaks into your house and they steal the camera, then they've got all the clips if you were recording locally. Now, the way that Wyze works is if there's an alert, like a motion alert, a sound alert, or if it detected that your smoke alarm went off, it's going to record a 12-second clip and send it to the cloud. If you want continuous recording, like just recording everything 24 hours a day, that's when you record it locally. So they're giving you, free, I think it's 2 weeks of rolling cloud storage of just the clips associated with a motion or sound or other event. And then locally, you've got as much storage as you want, or as much, relatively much storage, however large of an SD card that you insert into the camera, and then you can record continuously. So the card itself, it's not secure, but if someone broke into your house, well, you have a problem. The Max Drive, which is the new product that they announced at CES, is coming out that will consolidate all those recordings down to a drive, kind of like a external drive bay, and you provide your own hard drive that you could hide somewhere in your house. Maybe the burglar wouldn't find it. If they stole the camera, they wouldn't really get anything because the camera, of course, uploaded a clip to the cloud that you could access later and perhaps identify the bad guy. The other part of this to think about in terms of the device, it's behind your firewall, it's behind your network. And back in the day, if you remember, most of these connected devices or even apps on your computer, you had to open up something on your firewall, right? Open up this port, forward it to a certain IP address for that device on your network. That is not how this happens anymore. Each device opens a connection itself, just connects outbound, because connections from your network to the outside world are generally allowed by your firewall or router. So it opens a connection to the, and again, I'm going to refer to the Wyze Cam. The Wyze Cam opens a connection to the Wyze cloud, and it's a two-way connection. Think of it as, it's not exactly a VPN, but it's sort of a VPN that allows that the Wyze cloud to it's a two-way data connection between your camera and their cloud. And that's safer than obviously opening up a port in your firewall that other systems could try to access. Because when services, like you can connect the Wyze Cam up to good old Amazon Lady A, right? But those services are cross-connecting in the cloud. It's not like when you grant access from your Wyze Cam or something else to another service like a smart assistant. that assistant doesn't directly connect back into your camera. It communicates to the Wyze servers, which then make the connection back into your camera because they have the credentials, they have the authority granted to it to get back into your camera because it made the connection, right? And again, like I said at the beginning, make that username and password a strong one. Or definitely make the password a strong one. Your username is usually your email address. So it's behind your firewall. It's opened a secure connection to their cloud. There's no other way to get back into your network. And the connection, like I said, is secure. It's the same type of connection as if you were shopping online and you see the lock symbol in your browser. So SSL or TLS, if you know what that means, that's the type of security or encryption. So the data is encrypted. So even if someone somehow was standing outside your house and scanning your Wi-Fi and looking at all the stuff going on, somehow they were on your Wi-Fi network, they still wouldn't see what's going on with the camera because it's encrypted. And it's encrypted with all of the layers that Wyze has implemented. They're the ones who have the keys to decrypt it. So if someone copied all this stuff across your network somehow, they still would have a really hard time, or it would be near impossible for them to decrypt what actually was sent, right? The other part of this, data, we'll call this data in transit, right? There's data at rest on a device, like a hard drive or a camera SD card, or there's data in transit. The other part of data in transit, specifically with the Wyze Cam, makes it harder for someone to get at it is because, number one, yeah, it's encrypted. Number two, it's intermittent, right? You can only have so many of these alerts happen per hour. Wyze Cam, the Wyze cameras will send up to 12 alerts per hour because it's every 5 minutes. So maximum of every 5 minutes, if a motion alert happened, it would send a 12-second video clip to the cloud. But that's not necessarily going to happen on a regular basis, so someone could not really predict when data was going to be sent. And that data is encrypted. And they probably can't get access to it either. We've heard the stories of like the NSA having special taps into the general internet where they can like just copy the entire internet as it's happening, which is, number one, a lot of data. And if it's encrypted, they have to then decrypt it later. It's hard to decrypt it in real time. So all of these things add up, without me going into all the extra stuff, all of these things add up to mean the data is safe. It would take someone really wanting to access this data between your Wyze Cam and their server to make it available and for them to get at it. It's secure whether your password is great or not. That's number one. If your password is really good, it's going to protect it even more because then they can't attempt to connect to the cloud and try to access it. The other part of it that Wyze talks about on not specifically on their site, but they responded to a Reddit thread that I found specifically saying that they have on the camera, so between the camera and their cloud servers, they've got special digital certificates, they've got special, we'll call them digital signatures, so that they're making sure that the connection that's being made to the Wyze cloud is from one of their devices, and not from some guy sitting in his basement trying to hack into the Matrix. By the way, The Matrix, 20 years old. Go see it. It's coming back to theaters this month. Somehow I missed it in the theater and I only saw it on DVD. Saw the other two, but haven't seen the original, so I actually cannot wait to see it in the theater. Just sort of a random thing. So if you're trying to hack into the Matrix, into the Wyze cloud, gonna be a little bit of a challenge. Now let's talk about data at rest within the Wyze servers. Now Wyze, among other companies, use AWS, which stands for Amazon Web Services. Amazon has had a massive data center, or many data centers, and they've been kind of leasing them out virtually to companies to use ever since the mid-2000s, when they figured, wow, we really do this well for ourselves, let's do this for others too. Microsoft has Azure, there are other companies that do this same kind of thing. So it helps small to medium-sized and even large businesses have the power of the cloud and very resilient, redundant servers with a lot of horsepower that they can kind of spin up on demand and utilize only what they need, which is great for companies like Wyze who have a growing customer base, and they don't quite know necessarily when they started the business, they don't know, well, we're going to need a couple gigs of space. No, it grows on demand, and their computing power grows on demand. So they use AWS. So let's assume that, say, Nest also uses AWS. So the other part of all these data servers or data centers is that with the cloud, all the data is kind of distributed so that it is redundant. If one data center or a portion of a data center goes down, there's no problem with you accessing the Wyze cloud, because it's distributed among various servers and among potentially various locations. And those locations, of course, utilize physical security measures. It's hard to get into the building for someone to go in and like steal all the hard drives, which would be that would be kind of like an Ocean's 11 operation, but a lot more intense. You've probably got big guys with big guns trying to keep people out of the building. You've got network firewalls. You've got all those basic security things in place. Then what you have, of course, is segmentation, because you've got various customers of AWS on all these different servers. You have the actual virtual segmentation of all of these little customer accounts, right? Customer A, maybe Nest is also using AWS for storage and processing of all of their video stuff. So they've got a whole chunk of server space somewhere that's distributed across various actual physical servers and locations. And the same thing with Wyze, and the same thing with many other companies. So you don't want company A getting into company B's stuff. So there's segmentation and there's access control that's guaranteed so that those companies are totally segregated on those various server clusters. And I'm being very, very, very kind of obscure about this. I'm not being very detailed, because you can go into all the AWS security documents and learn more about how all of their stuff works to a certain extent. There is a level of security of simply not telling people how it works, which also offers certain amount of protection. Wyze is not necessarily going to tell you, if you call them up, hey, tell me all about your security practices. Part of it is just not telling people how it all works. But AWS offers, once you have an account, and once you have all that server space and you can store your files, you can have a database, you have computing power to process video, some portion of how the Nest Cam works is that they send all that video to the cloud, and then they do a lot of processing on it to figure out the motion detection, people tracking, pets and all those things. So there's compute power with AWS, there's storage, there's database. They offer so many different things to their customers. So once the customer sets up the account, they have all this space set up, they have all their data files and so forth. They can choose to add an additional layer of encryption. Now, my guess is, even though I haven't been able to find it, my guess is that at a base level, on all these hard drives that are spinning around, or probably SSDs in these data center facilities, that base level encryption is turned on. So somehow, if the drives were stolen, all of that data is not just going to be available to someone to just put in their own hard drive, their own PC, and say, oh, I've got all this stuff. Of course, it would be tough to know which hard drive contained which data, because again, all of this is virtualized, because these are virtual little portions of Amazon's server cloud architecture, specifically called virtual private cloud, like having your own little cloud computing. That's what you can get, one of the services that AWS provides. So again, the customer can then turn on additional encryption. So you've got all those things in place to make sure that they're not going to be hacked just because Amazon can guarantee a certain amount of security for that account and for that server infrastructure. Then on top of that, the customer can say, all right, I want to encrypt all the data on these drives that I have virtually spun up. I want to encrypt the databases. I want to have additional firewalls, additional network intrusion. I want to have a different network architecture virtually. You can just go down the rabbit hole of looking at all this information and documentation. The truth is that your data is pretty well protected. Again, if somehow Wyze or Nest or one of these other companies experienced an issue where their security was compromised and someone got the copy of the usernames and passwords, yes, that could be a problem. And again, if you hear about it in the news, change your password immediately. The other question you're going to have, of course, is, all right, if all these clips are being stored on the server, again, rolling 14-day storage, so after 14 days, they're gone pretty much. You get 14 days of storage, and the clips overwrite. The oldest ones are overwritten. The question is, though, who has access to them? If it's all secure, you have access to them, of course, but Wyze does as well, only at the highest levels in the company. We also have to make the assumption, again, part of your own due diligence is buy devices from well-known companies that have good reputations. Even if it's inexpensive like a Wyze, they've been very upfront and transparent with their customers. The customers love the company. Go with companies that you can count on, that at the end of the day, you have to trust your gut instinct. But the companies that are going to be well-known and they're going to have the right security practices in place and the right policies in place for their own people, because if there is, worst case scenario, if somehow there's a search warrant or a court order that says, hey, we need XYZ person's all their files, all of this stuff on the server, Wyze or another company most likely has to provide that. So there's a certain few, most likely of just a few staff members who have the appropriate permission level to go into your files. They would have access to everybody's video clips and provide those to the appropriate authorities. But otherwise, your video clips are segmented just to you. But because Wyze is providing the security, they kind of own all that, right? You have to think about on your own local device like your iPhone, or think about on your own local computer. If you encrypt your iPhone, if you encrypt your computer, if you lose that password, if you lose that recovery key, you're out of luck because you're the one maintaining the security. If you set up an account with, say, Dropbox, right? You can upload a file, but they're providing the security, and again, they could have to provide those files to the authorities if necessary. Your files are secure within their system because it's only allowed, you're the only one who gets access to the account, and the files that are basically segmented, and you only have access to your little slice of their server, which is basically where all your files reside for, say, Dropbox, or again, video clips with, say, Wyze or Nest or what have you. But they're providing the security, they're providing the encryption, so you have to, it's sort of like you've got to trust them that they're going to do the right thing. But your video clips are on their server. And the other example I can give you in terms of why local encryption, like your own encryption versus theirs, if you, say, really wanted to provide extra security for files that you stored on Dropbox, you would take those files and encrypt them first yourself and then upload them to Dropbox. And if the files were provided to the authorities, you broke the law or something happened, the authorities couldn't necessarily decrypt those files because they were encrypted by you. If you just upload something to the web and it's password protected and it's secure, it doesn't mean that if someone downloads it or if it's provided to the authorities that they're not going to have access to it. So you really have to think about how this works in terms of who's providing the security, who's providing the encryption. The truth is, and the answer ultimately to the question is, can you trust Wyze to keep your data safe? I believe so. They're using all the appropriate types of technologies to provide security for the data in transit and the data at rest on the Amazon, the AWS servers. Let's recap real quick because I've given you a lot of information. So number one, take a look at your risk factor. Are you really at risk for being personally attacked somehow? Maybe you don't have to be as concerned. But step number 2, use good security practices. Long passwords, an email address that's perhaps not tied to anything else, that's not public. Use two-factor authentication if you can, depending on the device. And the device itself and the company, use your gut instinct. Do your due diligence, do your homework. Are they a trusted name? Have they been around for a couple of years? Are they updating their app? Are they updating the firmware of the device? Have they had any breaches or anything like that? Look up all that stuff and then ultimately go with your gut instinct. Look at their specifications on their website, on the device. Are they protecting the data both in transit and at rest? On the device, possibly, where Wyze isn't necessarily doing that with the micro SD card because it would introduce additional steps that you would have to go through. I think it's probably okay, and perhaps the Max Drive is going to take care of that. We'll find out once that device actually hits the market. Otherwise, there's no data really on the device. When they're connecting from your home network to their server, make sure that they're using SSL or TLS, again, just like credit cards and online shopping, and they're using special certificates to identify that this is one of their devices connecting to the cloud and not some guy in an apartment somewhere trying to hack in. And what security precautions are they taking? Are they on a cloud system provided by Jangsicle Industries, or is it AWS? AWS itself has a whole lot of encryption and security practices already in place before you even create an account as a business like Wyze, and then they turn on additional security, additional encryption, and they publish that, and they show you, or they tell you what they're doing. So that is the end of part 1 of this Q&A for February 2019. If you would like to stop here, then well, go ahead and stop here. Otherwise, there's going to be a second video where I talk more about smart home hubs, and not specifically individual hubs, but the categories and why they differ. This is a question that comes up on a regular basis, and it was a question that came up through an email. So I will kind of do my usual ending. This is Joe DeGanzik for Smarter Home Life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time, or I'll see you on part 2 of this Q&A for February 2019.